Yeah.
So 4 months later, after all this was the one where it got put on the schedule that you were going to meet with him?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you were already at Ford at this point?
Yeah. No, it was a Ford model.
Now
yeah.
you're at Ford, so he had made that call.
Mm-hmm.
So you see his name on the schedule, you're like, well, I guess I got to go. What's your initial reaction though? Like, or like,
Well, I just remember calling my agent to say like I didn't want to go.
And what they say?
Well, I think she made a call probably to Katie Ford just to see. But I remember her saying, "Oh, I have to go. He has connections with Victoria's Secret and things like that. So I think you need to go." And remember, at the time, I didn't know how close the agency owner was to Epstein. I had no idea they were sending each other girls. I just thought, well, that's funny. Why would I have to go see that guy?
Right.
But I went, and I went to that Upper East Side mansion, knocked on that big door, and walked right in. And
there wasn't like a moment where you're like, I'm really about to do this? Or were you just kind of like, they told me I have to do this, I'm going to do this?
Of course, there was that thought, I know what happened on the island, so I was nervous about it, but I just thought, oh, well, he helped me to get into the agency. They said he was great, and she said, oh, I love Giuffre, he's a good guy and all that stuff. So I thought, okay, he's a good guy now. So now in my head, he did something for me. He's a good guy. And so I went and met with him, and I had a really, really great conversation with him for about an hour. I talked to him about all sorts of things and, laughed and talked about my real goals and ambitions again. And
Did he answer the door?
No.
Someone else answers, right?
No, like the butler. The butler answered the door.
Juan Alessi?
Probably was Juan.
Okay.
It probably was Juan. If not, I can't remember who answered the door the first time. It wasn't. It was probably one of the maids.
Okay.
But they let you in and they seat you in the room until you're ready to go up the stairs into his office.
Okay, so they take you up, escort you to the office, and that's where you have this hour-long conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What the second you walked in there, before you have this good conversation that I do want to hear more about, like you see him for the first time, what's the feeling like?
Deep breath. He made me feel really comfortable right off the bat. So I felt comfortable with him, I think, again, like the initial meeting. Just had a really good conversation with him, just about life again, goals, thanked him for introducing me to Katie and becoming a Ford model. And he asked a lot of questions about that and, what kind of events and things I was going. Did I know a lot of models? And he definitely wanted to know, like, how much I networked and how many people I knew and just how, like, deep I was in the modeling business and knew people, which I knew a lot of people then. And so I think that was kind of exciting for him that I knew a lot of other young girls. And we just had like a really good, I just remember a really good conversation. And he was on the phone with a really important person. And so he made it a point to let me know like who he was on the phone with. I could hear him talking and
you're not going to say who that was.
Well, he was like a billionaire at the time and I knew who he was. Who recently came out in the files.
Ooh.
So I heard him talking to him.
Hey guys, 3 quick things. Number 1, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's a huge, huge help. Number 2, if you'd like to join my Patreon for early uncensored releases of the full episodes, you can join via the link in my description or in the pinned comment below. And number 3, if you'd like to join my clipping community for a chance to make content from the show and make money, you can join via the Discord link in my description below.
And then he told me like a little secret about him. And so he was trying to make me feel like really comfortable, kind of like I was in like one of his people or, he was really good. So it was just a really good conversation. So I thought at the time that was going to be it. I thought that was it. So I kind of like got
You thought you'd never see him again after that?
Well, I don't know. I just thought that was it. I thought, well, that was great. Thank you, for everything you did for me. Wonderful. Like, just wanted to get out of there. And then I just kind of like got my bag and stuff all ready and I tried to like get out of there. And he just was like, no, where are you going?
And then does it clock back like, oh shit, this is now going to be...
He was like, let's do a massage.
Just like that?
Mm-hmm.
What goes through your head when he says that?
I didn't really have time to think because he was right out the door to the massage room. So there goes the next massage. So that's when I had the next massage, which was exactly like the first one without the girl.
I can't really... This is one of those situations where you want to try to like put yourself in the shoes of someone like that. And I guess I'm happy to say I can't. But like, I wonder if just the fact that you walked through the door, considering it was 4 months later, he had already abused you. Now you had a job because of him. He was put on the schedule and you walked on your own volition to his place. He was like, gotcha. Like, I can't think of another way to... Is that how you describe it?
The only thing that I know is the fact that I saw someone really important. He was not allowed to let me out of that orbit. I was not allowed to be free without me thinking he was a good guy, that I would never turn on him or talk about him. You know, so I just feel like there was a reason why he keeps you in that orbit. And so the massage, whether he was getting off on me or not, I think has to be done because that's the way of keeping you silent again. Because I don't understand why he wouldn't just let me leave. Like, why would he have to? I mean, we know now that he abused that exact way I'm explaining to you 6 to 8 times a day with different girls, 6 to 8 times a day.
Yeah.
He was jacking off 2 girls 6 to 8 times a day. And that's what he liked. So, I don't really know why he wanted to do those things to me. I really don't know why. He didn't always do it, but that time he definitely did. So.
Same thing when it was over, just kind of like, we're done.
Yeah. Grab your stuff and leave.
When you walk out of there, is it the same kind of, I don't know, frozen type feeling you had the first time, like just literally right over again, or is there anything different this time?
Well, it's just confusing because it's an actual real massage, right? It's not like, let me just pull this girl in here and just rape her. You know, it's like an actual massage. Like he's really teaching you how to do a darn massage. Like he really needs a massage 6, 8 times a day. And then he has to, like, it's his thing, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, that's just like, it's something entirely different though. Like it may start that way, okay, but then he's turning that into something that's not a massage. It's pure rape. But you're not, there's something in your head where you're kind of like normalizing the fact, well, it is a massage.
No, I would definitely know it was a violation of my body. But it just, I can't even answer to you why. I couldn't feel like I could leave or scream or do anything. You know, I just was just hoping I'd never have to see him again. That's always what I was hoping. I would leave and never have to see him again. And it's crazy too, because, you know, as a podcaster too, like yourself, I've interviewed a lot of Larry Nassar survivors. Mm-hmm. And my God, their abuse is the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. Jewish guy who treats them like, oh, you know, this is like our little secret, you know, I'm helping you out, you know, here's little snacks, you know, like trying to get on their good side while he lays them on a table and abuses them the same way. He's a digital abuser. He never had sex with them. He uses fingers and tools in their body, you know, and they were just as confused as too. And the Epstein survivors say, oh, is he doing these creepy massages to you? And the Larry Nassar gymnasts are like, is he doing the same medical procedure to you too? You know, that they can tell is creepy and not right too, but everyone knows it's creepy. Everyone knows it's not right. Everyone knows he's violating you, but nobody says like, This is an assault. This is abuse. Nobody can even say those words. I never did. They never did. And it's like, it's the exact same type of abuse they get away with because they get off on that. They have control over you. But nobody knows how to identify it. And it comes with massive confusion.
Yeah.
So when I leave, I'm like confused. It was the guy talked to me for an hour. He's like a mentor. He shared little secrets to me about so-and-so. Like, he got me with an agency. Like, I like all these things. And then I'm like, well, maybe it's not so bad. And I would just justify it like, well, fuck. Maybe that's just what we have to go through as women, that we don't have autonomy. We don't have like anything over our body to say like, no, leave me alone, get off me. It's like almost really, really difficult to say something like that when you're in those situations.
But you're pretty quickly like, I don't want to say not rationalizing, but when you're trying to like understand what's going on, that's a thought that's coming in where you're like, well, I guess I just don't have control.
Exactly. Yeah, I think most of the time you feel like when you're groomed, you don't have control. I feel like if you just dragged me off the street, yeah, I think that would fight back and things. But I think after you're groomed for an hour, and then it's a massage, and then it's the assault, then it's like this whole thing of like, wait a second, what just happened?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's his MO. That's how he abused, the majority of these girls.
One of the things we don't know a ton about to this point, and maybe some people out there, if you've unearthed it, you can share evidence in the comments. I'd love to review it. But we don't know a hell of a lot about Jeffrey Epstein's childhood. We know he grew up in Coney Island. He had 2 parents at home. He had a brother, but we don't know of any like life experiences he had and stuff like that. So if I assumed for a second that he was not someone who himself was abused a bunch, because there are prolific abusers out there who weren't abused. They just get off on this kind of thing and do it. Where do you think that ability to psychologically manipulate people like that comes from?
It's a really good question. I would think he would have had to have learned it from someone. I don't know if it's a family member, or something you watch on TV. I just don't know. I mean, it takes years to get to that stage. I don't think it just happens overnight. But probably, a little bit here, a little bit there, seeing how you can get over people, how easy it is to manipulate, and then, just working your way up the ladder. You can manipulate someone at, the high school, then you can manipulate someone in finance, then you can manipulate someone in government, you can manipulate, young girls are pretty easy. So he used to always say like 25, 26, that's when the brain's developed. So he never went over 20, 25, 26,
Oh, he would say
Oh yeah,
it like
yeah,
that.
young, yeah, yeah.
That's
Girls'
when the
brain
brain-
develops at 25, 26. They would never, ever even, because you can't have any, it's very, very difficult to manipulate a woman when she's hit 26 years old. They're just, have a different way of thinking and a worldly view, and it's harder.
Unless you had pre-existing manipulation with them.
I mean, you can manipulate anyone at any age. You can be 50, 60 and manipulate. We
understand.
see that happen all the time.
I understand.
But it's just easier when you're younger, obviously, because it's, you look up to adults.
You want to believe.
You want to believe them and you trust them. And if you're making an assault on you look like it's nothing, then sometimes it just becomes like, oh, it's nothing.
And in that 1 hour conversation, he really did make you feel like, oh, he's like kind of a mentor.
And I was
He
special.
flipped you and you were special. What about, not even necessarily something specific with what he said, but what about how he was talking with you made you feel special?
Well, the fact that I was even able to become a Ford model made me feel very special.
Just that.
It was super not easy to become a Ford model.
Yeah.
I'd worked so hard many, many years to even get to that stage. And he's no idiot. He's not sending off some girl at random girls to Ford modeling agency. You have to actually be able to get signed to that agency. special enough to sit in front of him for that hour, and get the best advice in the world, basically. He advises, billionaires and the tops of government, and I'm getting the best advice. Really, really good advice I still use to this day.
Like what?
Well, just business. I was able to form and build businesses and be successful in everything that I wanted to do, probably from a lot of the things that he taught me. I mean, he sat there and taught me things. It wasn't just like surface conversation.
Do you have not to put you on the spot, but do you have like a specific example maybe with as it relates to running a business or something like that he taught you?
Well, I guess I could, but I'll tell you something that he used to say to me with men. Because he used to send me on auditions. And when I would come back from the audition, I would disappoint him. Like if I didn't do anything with the director or I didn't get the part. And he would say, oh, that's just the way Hollywood works. You have to just, let the guy think you're going to sleep with him. You don't have to actually sleep with him. But just, flirt with him a little bit, put your hand on his knee, be a little bit like aggressive, but don't have to go there because they can't sleep with everybody. You know what I mean? So he would say, oh, you fucked up. Because like a lot of times he would send me on these auditions and he'd want to know every little thing that happened or was said, because he wanted to have these things on people and how they operated and how they were. Were they straight up like invite you to dinner and then slowly assault you, or do they straight off assault you? Like he wanted to know everything. So he would try to tell you how to be with a man, but also to get ahead like in your career and in business and things. So also he would tell me about businesses that were coming up that women could, whatever you were interested in, he would tell you, how to manipulate those situations to get your career. Like I had friends that were in the art world and friends that were wanting to be like TV hosts and things like that. And he definitely showed them how to like manipulate it so they could become successful. That's why there's many women today who are extremely successful who are knew Epstein when they were younger.
Does it feel weird that a guy so evil, I don't even really know how to say this, but like so evil, just as like an aside to all the evil shit he did, would give people like you something that you might actually still use to this day?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was evil. The people around him were very evil.
Yeah.
As you can see in the files.
Yes.
There was a lot of evil going on. I'm not sure if he was giving me evil advice. I think it was just like business advice, I don't know. I see it as just business advice. I don't think there was anything like that was nefarious for me to like swindle my way through, but
that's what I was saying.
Yeah,
I should have said that more clearly. What I'm saying is he's an evil guy. He does all this evil stuff, and that's who he is. And then just as a part of his manipulation tactics on the periphery, he might happen to throw you a bone of a good piece of business advice.
He told me, if you go for any job, the fact that you're a Ford model, you will get called in every time. So you make your resume, put at the top that you were a Ford model. He said every single job that you go for with your resume, you'll get called in.
Right.
And it's so funny now because I'll look at resumes from people that I know knew him. I'll look at their resumes that have come up in the files. It says they were a Ford model.
Right at the top.
So he was giving this advice out, So just little things like that, that I picked up on, that you would listen to from any mentor.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a mentor that's abusing you. A mentor of mentor, is giving you life advice because he's not going to speak on anything but real things, I don't know if I'm like proud of any of that, but I mean, I'm no stupid girl. If I'm going to sit there for an hour with somebody, I'm going to get like the best information,
Sure.
Because that was the part of making me feel comfortable enough for an hour later to do what he wants to do.
And also the point you make about putting the billionaire on speaker, someone you would know, and like showing you, hey, I can even tell you about this guy. You can listen in on him. What do you think I can tell? It's like psychologically,
What do you think I can tell about you to other people?
And you know what's so crazy too? In the files, some of the secrets that he told me, I could see. It's like validation.
Yes.
In the files. It's like, okay, wow, that was true and that was true. I don't believe there was anything that man said to me that wasn't true.
Anything.
No, I really don't believe he was bullshitting on anything. I think almost everything, I think everything he said was true. Yeah, I don't really see why he had to lie. I mean, the manipulation, but the manipulation wasn't in the lies. The manipulation was just like, he always came through on what he said he would do for you. I have girlfriends that went through 4 years of university through him, you know, got their jobs through him, things like that.
So he would keep his promises on stuff like that.
Because he can.
Because he can.
Yeah, he's not like, let's take like the mediocre pedophiles and predators out there. They give you false promises.
Right.
And they get you in, and then they can't keep you much longer because they're always false promises because they have no leverage and no power. This man had all the power in the world, you know, to get what he wanted. That's why he could get these beautiful young women and,
Right.
you know, and make all these things happen for them. And then, you know, the leverage of the underage girls in Florida. I mean, what was their leverage? They're in high school. So it's just money, you know, for their family. $200 or $300 for their family goes a really long way.
And he would go after poor girls around there too.
Yeah, who had parents that were in jail or drug addicted parents. I know a lot of them, you know, and they have like major trauma from all this. Horrific trauma.
Oh, I mean, I can't even...
I think the trauma comes worse for most girls when it had to do with Ghislaine, because it was a woman.
Because it was a woman.
Well, because kind of you can expect, you know, someone like Giuffre Epstein to abuse you. He's an older man. What else does he want you around for? But the older woman, like, what is she doing? Why is she pulling in young girls? Why are you doing that to young girls? Not many women do that. You kind of have to be a monster.
She's a monster.
Yeah, to go looking for hundreds of girls and then, you know, giving it to him, giving you over to him, and then also participating, you know.
Yes.
There's a big difference, as I said, than a Sarah Cullen, in my opinion. Someone who's probably in her 20s, who was abused, you know, who turns and maybe made wrong choices. Of course, she made wrong choices, but Ghislaine is on a whole different level.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's also all the people around, though, because it's a similar type of psychological question to ask, like what I asked with Sarah. But did you ever hear the 2 podcast series that Tara Palmieri did back in 2020? Mm-hmm. One was like the Maxwells, the other one was Epstein. So Virginia went around with her.
Yeah.
And in one of the podcast series, it's literally like a documentary, just recorded, but they go to usually the gated communities of different people who were associated with Jeffrey Epstein and say, hey, it's Virginia Roberts Giuffre with, remember me? And I'm with this reporter, Tara Palmieri. Can we come in? And a lot of people wouldn't let them in.
Yeah.
Like the chef, Adam Perry Lang, was like, oh, I remember you, Virginia, through an emissary, but I can't meet with you. The guy, Juan Alessi, let them in.
The driver.
I guess he was like the housekeeper. It's been a while. People go, I actually do need to go listen to that podcast again because I cited a lot. So I will do that after this. But he not only let them in, he agreed to let Tara record it. And I always say it's one of the most difficult things to listen to from like a human perspective because you feel a million emotions for this guy. You feel anger that he didn't say anything. Yeah. You feel empathy for the fact that he was an immigrant who signed this crazy NDA with these powerful people and then felt pressured to not say anything. You feel weird that he's sitting with Virginia, who he clearly not only remembered and knew, but liked a lot and viewed her as a real person. And yet you're angry at him because he turned a blind eye to this stuff. I mean, there's so much going on.
Yeah, but what power did he have to say anything back then?
That's my question.
He would have wound up dead, or like nobody would have believed him.
That's what I wanted to ask
and nobody listened to anyone back then.
Yeah. So when you look at people like that, the gardeners, the housekeepers, the people that were around him working on like the staff, you kind of look at it like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, what were they going to do?
what could they do? I feel bad for them because I'm sure they have a lot of guilt and shame about
Yes.
it. I'm sure they do.
Yes.
I'm sure they're seeing, 8 girls a day at a house, young girls coming in and out the doors. I think they're not stupid to know what's going on. They have to clean up like dildos and things out of his room. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
But they have no power to say anything, I mean, obviously we wish they would have. I wish there were some FBI files that says they made a report or something, but it wouldn't have done anything. They had reports from hundreds of girls.
You see this latest video of the other Butler that they interviewed in 2009? I still have to look at this all the way, but like it's on tape, and he was telling them like what was going on. I think they arrested him.
What, recently?
Yeah, no, it's from the files. Steve, can we pull it up on Twitter? Epstein Butler. I want to make sure I get it right. This was like just coming out.
Oh, that was coming out in the files.
Yes.
Oh, right. Okay, good.
Yes, and the FBI. It's in like a gray tape. If we can find, yep, that's it. Can we pull this up on the screen and see what's what? So this is a formerly secret video of Jeffrey Epstein's butler trying to sell a copy of Epstein's little black book. So I guess it was like,
Yeah, and then he got in trouble for it. Why is he doing time?
oh, I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing. 'Cause
Yeah, I
it's
know.
sad.
I saw this one, and then he gets in trouble for it.
That's insane.
It's just, I don't even have the words for it. He goes to jail for that, and not the actual people that were doing things. Yeah.
Well, the famous line from the '08 case, Alex Acosta, who later became labor secretary, I was told he belongs to intelligence.
He was told that Giuffre belongs to intelligence. Yeah. That's what he was told. So, and that means hands off. Yeah.
That would explain the 80 cameras in every room.
But just because you belong to intelligence doesn't mean you have the
insane.
right to like abuse all these
insane.
girls.
It's insane.
It's like, it's like this godlike thing. I can do whatever I want to do, and because, I have immunity and nothing's ever going to happen to me.
Yeah, like that's the thing. That guy, Alex Acosta, has daughters, I believe. We can check that.
So many of them have daughters.
I know. Exactly. But like...
But I think that so many of their hands are tied. They can't even do anything. That's the problem.
He's running that whole case, though. It's like, I don't know.
I don't know either. I think there's just a crazy amount of evidence out there. So,
Lisa, real quick, I just have to go to the bathroom. And
Yeah.
We'll come right back.
Okay.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, we're back. So, God, I have so many questions here, but we did get off from the second half of like after you left the second time from his place and you were going back. Like, where did you go back to that day? You said you had a full day scheduled out for you. Did you go back to the agency right away, or do you not remember?
I don't know.
Similar kind of like have to compartmentalize it though again.
I have no idea. I mean, I've not even thought about where I went after that.
When was the next time you saw him?
So during those years, like I would travel a lot for work. So I always had the excuse of like not being available as much, and I tried to avoid him as much as I could. So there was a few times that I saw him over the next couple years. And it was pretty much the exact same thing I described in the second scenario, the second time I went there.
So he'd talk to you for a while, somehow make you feel good again.
Yeah, and then the massage. It didn't happen every time, but it happened most of the time. And then from there, it was mostly just, I don't think his thing was to have me do these massages. I think it was more so, I have an audition, and he would send me on a plane to go to Los Angeles for an audition. And that person, a big director, is in the files. So... And then I found out many years later that other girls were sent to that same director. So it was things like that. And then there was an episode where he told me to go to, it was after a movie premiere, and I went to a Hollywood after premiere party. And the owner of the Ford modeling agency was also there with some girls. And then there was this like celebrity that was like all over me, and I, kept saying like, get away from me. He was way, way, way older than me, and like gross or coked out or whatever. And I was just like, leave me alone. And I was complaining to my bookers and stuff from the Ford agency, that this guy was bothering me. And then we left, that restaurant, and we went to a couple other parties. And then I found myself with, Katie Ford and some other models back at this actor's house at a suite at his hotel on the Upper East Side. And I was in there for a few minutes, and then they left. I was in the bathroom, and I was there left alone. And then from there, I was assaulted by that celebrity, very well-known celebrity in that room. So at that time, I had just thought, well, like dumb luck, on my part that it ended up that way. But I ended up finding out years later through like, now we're 2020 and I'm deposed for cases and I'm telling stories of what happened to me. And my attorneys are like, oh, you've been trafficked. And then they're like, who did what? And then all this stuff started coming out. And I found out during that time that Katie Ford had been in on things with Epstein, and that Epstein had sent me to her, but she was sending girls to him. And so I just started getting really upset about it because, here I am thinking I worked my way, in becoming a Ford model. And now to find out, there was some nefarious, ways of me becoming a model had to do with these agency owners. And then they were like in cahoots with like bringing these young girls to parties around these older men and kind of like pushing you off to these men while you just think that you're special and just hanging out with these people, and there was a much darker reason why they were bringing you around to these places. And so that was really hard for me to like comprehend and know that that's what was really going on.
In those early years when you're a Ford model and this stuff is intermittently happening, you had said you'd always wanted to be a model and everything like that. Were you able to ever have fun doing your job too? Or was the joy taken away?
No, I did, of course. Like we would travel on shoots to exotic locations, different countries. I really enjoyed the actual job of modeling. It's pretty strenuous. I wake up really early. You have to take really good care of your skin and your body. It was around really creative people, I love the artistic expression of it, but, there was all sorts of things going on where you were constantly around these creepy men who, predatory men. And also finding out that a lot of the women were involved never really sat right with me. It never does when these older women are putting you, around these older men. It's basically trafficking you to these men.
It is,
without you even knowing it.
Absolutely.
And I feel bad for a lot of these girls who are just trying to live out their dreams, like I was, and put in these situations where they never really should have been in. So that episode was really weird. I didn't find out what was really going on with that until just 2 years ago. There was also agents who, weird things were going on. So these model agencies not only were sending girls to Epstein, they were also bringing you to these parties around other older men. And they were also in with a lot of politicians and like senators and things like that.
So you would see those people there?
So I'll tell you about this. I don't think I've ever brought this up. I had time to really tell this story. But so now I'm a Ford model, feeling good, living the life, having a great career. I would go out often with Katie Ford and her husband, Andre Balas. Now, Andre was very handsome and charming. And the girls didn't really mind him being around because he just, he was very good looking. But it was always this thing of like, it's kind of weird. Like, she's with this guy, And then we would start seeing him around a lot with, whenever she wasn't around, there would be Uma was around, Uma Thurman, the actress. I think he later married. So there was these things that were just right in your face. It didn't really make sense why these adults who were married were
Right.
having their mistress or whoever right in front of you. There was just weird things like that. So one day I'm at the agency and one of my bookers, and Katie was there and some of the other agents were there, and we're like, we had a guy in the other day who was like checking out comp cards and was like, ooh, who's Lisa Phillips? Like, she's really cute. And they were like, he's a really important person, and we think you should go on a blind date with him. And so I was just like, are you serious? Like, I've never gone on a blind date. And they were like, yeah, you should go out with this guy. And I was just like, okay, whatever. And so, they organized this blind date for me. And so I remember being with my girlfriends. By this time I lived in the Upper East Side, and I had got ready for this date, and they had told me to wear like a really nice dress because we were going to a really nice dinner party. And so they had their hand in all of this for the date. And so I didn't think anything of it because I just thought, it's going to be some young hot guy. It'd be fun. And so like, it's so stupid back then, like who thinks about this kind of stuff? And so you just trust your agency. And so I get all ready. I'm in this like pretty dress. And then I go running out. I remember it was a Range Rover, and I go to open the door and I'm like, are we picking up your grandson? And he's like, no. I was like, your son? And he's like, no. And I'm like, I'm going out with you? And he was like, yeah. Like, get in. It'll be fine. Just get in. I know. And he names the bookers and stuff like that. I'm like, are you serious? Like, I just couldn't believe it because the guy looked so old.
Yeah.
Like my grandfather, white hair. And he was old. And I was just like, I didn't understand it. So I get in the car, and he ends up being actually really nice. He's a state senator.
Oh, they always are, right?
Yeah. He's a senator. So I'm just like, okay. This man takes me around the corner, Upper East Side, near Madison and 70-something, around the corner from Epstein's house. We go into this house, up into an elevator, into this beautiful dining area, and where he seats me down for dinner, and I'm sitting next to Al Gore and Tippy. And I'm just like, this is year 2000, 2001. And I'm just like, huh? And I remember, like, I'm pretty cultured and whatever, and, talking about art and politics. I have no idea what these people are talking about. And I remember after the dinner, so I just hold my own. After the dinner, I was like, why did you bring me to this dinner? I was like, aren't you embarrassed to be there with me? You're so much older than me. And he was like, no, it's no big deal. And I'm like, are you serious? And I remember asking him, like, I had no idea what they were saying the whole time. And he was like, oh, if you just read the New York Times every day, you'll understand everything, And I was just like, this is just the weirdest world. And then he dropped me off at my house. And I remember running upstairs and telling my girlfriends, like, you won't believe what just happened. I was like,
So he just did dinner.
yeah, it was just dinner. It was really nothing. Dropped me off. Granted, I never went back out with him again because now that I know how it works, probably would have been abused at some point. But I never went back out with that guy because I just thought, how weird is that? And I remember going back to my agency like the next day or whenever I went in there and being like, you hooked me up with a 70-year-old man.
Who was sitting next to the dude who I'm guessing by the timeline had just lost the most contentious presidential election ever. Just casually.
And why would you bring someone like me, someone so young, with you to such an important dinner with all like political people there, the climate, everyone that was around? Why would you be so like candid, not to think like that's kind of, I even said to him, aren't you embarrassed of me to be there with you? There's probably like a 50-year-old, a 50 age gap here. No, it was just nothing. Now I understand why it's nothing, but back then I just was like, you guys are weird. And that was my model agency that put me on a blind date with this guy, knowing full well, and didn't even say to me, look, he's going to be a little older than you, didn't even like say anything to me. That's how much like they just like use and abuse you, just you're like a little pawn in their whole little game, they just don't really give a shit. They probably wouldn't have cared if I was assaulted by that guy that night.
No, I don't think they would have.
Yeah.
I think that's probably part of the expectation. you were having enough fun doing the job of modeling and, as you said, having these other experiences around the world and whatever, that you were able to kind of separate those two. But as someone who spent years as a model and then spent a lot of years working in the industry as a modeling scout, like looking back on it now and knowing what you know, are you kind of like, this is such a gross industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why I tapped out about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like done.
What was the breaking point?
Well, I mean, all this stuff was coming up, and I
Yeah.
had been through these depositions with Virginia Giuffre. I was deposed for her case, and with the J.P. Morgan, I found out lots of information.
Bookmark that. We'll come back.
Yeah, it's just so many things. And I was just like, also sitting in the offices at one of the most prestigious agencies in the world and still having girls and boys come in saying, this person touched me, and this person like tried to hit on me, and this person assaulted me. I'm like, still? Like, this is still going on? Where's the protection? And I just was getting fed up of it. So I really decided right in that moment, like, I'm getting out of this business and I'm going to go right into podcasting, because that's the thing to go into right now. I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to talk to survivors. I'm a survivor. I'm going to start telling my story, and I'm going to listen to survivor stories. And I just ended up just doing it very quickly. About 2 years ago, I just went right into it and started doing it.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Oh, I also have to hook you up with Sarah Edmondson as
Yeah.
well. I know.
Yeah.
I had her in here. Her story was really amazing too. You guys would do a great podcast together.
Yeah.
But I think unfortunately, when you now see something so blatantly made in the open and people not going to prison, you ask yourself, wow, this stuff's still happening. Why? Well, here's why. Because other people look at it and they go, well, look, even those guys don't go to prison.
Exactly.
They were doing cannibal shit.
Exactly. That's why someone like Pam Bondi had the responsibility to at least acknowledge people who have been assaulted. Acknowledge them. The
Right.
fact that you don't even acknowledge them just spreads like wildfire throughout all survivors everywhere. Don't speak up.
Yeah.
'Cause
And she's
you're
a
not gonna
woman
get-
too.
You're not going to get anywhere.
She's a woman too. That's really like double.
You have no idea how many people in the modeling business have been abused. I mean, most models will be like, me, 2 times, 6 times, 10 times. It happens so much, with young, ambitious women, not just modeling, entertainment world.
Of course.
Music world is even worse. But anyone who's working their way up the ladder to, have a successful career,
Yes.
this stuff happens. So.
Goes right back to the manipulation he did in the first conversation where he said he asked you about your dreams, your family, and all the good stuff. You're talking about the most preeminent industry examples of places where that is what they sell. When you talk modeling, when you talk entertainment, when you talk Hollywood, it's like only a select few make it. You really want it, right? How bad do you want it? And they prey on that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's how a lot of the sex trafficking rings today, that's the foundation of them.
Yeah.
They prey on those dreams. And that's how they say, oh, we'll come to Vegas. And then we're going to introduce you to the right people, whether it's a music business or whatever, and they come to Vegas, and then they're right into the trafficking ring.
How did you said you got married in 2006?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How did you meet your husband?
Do we have to go into that?
You don't have to. No. Sorry. If that's not something.
We're divorced.
Your ex-husband, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I was in Malibu.
It's a nice place. We don't have to talk about that.
Had a beautiful, I hadn't confronted my trauma.
Yeah.
I hadn't gone through therapy and stuff. So I brought a lot of that into the relationship, chose someone who didn't end up being a very good relationship for me. And so I ended up raising my children all by myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
You
I
said
ended
you have
up
2
leaving.
kids?
Yeah, I ended up leaving him and moving to New York again in 2011 with two young boys, and just realizing I have to do it all myself. ended up going kind of back into the modeling world, and many of the people that I knew helped me out, and I started a scouting agency and protecting models, finding models and managing them and placing them with big agencies. So I was pretty successful working in that business, and I had 2 little babies at the time, and then found out a few months later that I was pregnant. That was really difficult for me because I already had 2 young babies by myself, and realized now I was pregnant, same father, but didn't even know, hadn't even shown or anything, and I was 3.5 months pregnant. Wow. So I ended up raising 3 young boys on my own.
That's amazing though.
Yeah.
That you did that.
Yeah, I can tell you entirely through my 30s, never was in any relationship. I raised my boys early from my 30s till I was 40 years old. Raised my kids all on my own. It was the best years of my life, but the hardest years of my life, here in New York City. Yeah. It wasn't until 2017 I moved with my kids. I always promised my kids, like, mommy is going to make it. She's going to take care of you, and we're going to move to Los Angeles, and we're going to have a view of the ocean, and we're going to have like the best life. And in 2017, I made that dream come true for them and moved them to Laguna Beach.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
A little different than New York City.
Yeah, I just wanted to be near the ocean and, have little surfer babies and have that beautiful California life. And so, I was able to give that to them, but it wasn't until I was 40 when I started dating again. My kids were a little older.
So when you're raising them on your own for all these years, though, like you said, you weren't confronting what had happened to you and everything. Did it change? Obviously, like you revolved your whole life around your kids and made unbelievable sacrifices for that, and are clearly a great mom. Did it change at all how you look at your kids from like a protective mother standpoint once you went back and thought about the things that had happened to you and then kind of looked at them like, oh my God?
Oh yeah, I'm a very protective mom. But I mean, I want to have independent children, and I want them to think for themselves and do whatever they want to do in their lives. And I will always support them 100%, but I'm very protective of them. I mean, as any parent should be. But through those years, it was just them and me, and it was really, really beautiful. So I didn't have any relationships, and I didn't want to. I had a failed marriage. I just chose really the wrong person for myself. We had nothing in common. He was Norwegian descent and, didn't really bond with them and basically kind of gave them up in a way. And so, I was in survival mode, I think, through my 30s, building a business and basically in survival mode, just all by myself, living in New York City, which is not cheap, and really did it all on my own. And it took me about 2 or 3 years, and I had a successful business, and I managed tons of models and really enjoyed it. And then was offered a position, at women management and the industry models to be the head scout. And then I started traveling around the world again as a scout for a Japanese agency. And that's when I started going to all these countries and doing the big scouting work.
You get to take your kids with you?
For some. But not really. They were young.
Yeah.
I thank God for my mother-in-law. She would come and stay with the kids and stuff. Thank God for her. I would never have been able to have, the career that I had without my in-laws, taking care of the kids.
Oh, so they're great. They stayed in your life.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so great in the beginning, when I left their son. But after a while, they loved their grandkids and they were there for them. And
that's cool.
Anytime I would leave for a week at a time to take care of business and travel the world, for my job, they would take care of the kids, and I'm so grateful for them. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to step into something personal there with your husband. The only reason I was asking,
I just never ever talk about him. So
yeah, that's absolutely fine with me. The only reason I was asking about that in general was because I was trying to figure out what mentally got you to a place to be able to trust someone enough to date them seriously and then marry them in the short years after, you're being abused by Giuffre. Like you said, the last time you saw Giuffre was 2004. Is that right? Yeah,
and I left straight to Los Angeles. I was an actress. I had, one of the best managers and talent agencies. I was auditioning. I loved I loved being an actress and a model. I really, really loved it. I just never really liked, what I was really up against.
Right.
Which was, it's a nefarious business. It's not a very upfront and honest business. There's a lot of people that just want to take advantage of you. And I could clearly see that because of the level where what I was working at and the friends that I knew. I could clearly see what was going on and I didn't like it. And so, my husband, he was Norwegian descent, and it was a sweet man, and he was in commercial real estate, and I really believed in him, and I really thought I was, going to marry him. I mean, let's face it, I was pregnant, but I was trying to make things work with him. I really wanted things to work and be with him, but found out very quickly that, it wasn't going to be a really good relationship. So It wasn't really my choice, not to be with the father of my kids, but it just, was just, the way it happened.
Yeah. Now you had talked about like over these years, you see Giuffre very intermittently, and sometimes there's abuse, other times there weren't. Would there be something like in a time where you went and talked with him and had a conversation where it didn't end in abuse? Would it be because it's in a public place or something like that? Is that the only reason it wouldn't happen? Or
I think the only reason why it didn't happen was because there was someone else there that he could abuse.
Oh.
Like, for instance, I was brought to his house for a couple parties. He would call me, be like, oh, I'm out with my friends. Well, bring your friends. That kind of thing. And just naively just being, okay, like thinking it's another like party to go to. But then you'd walk in and you'd go up until like the I guess it was the library with a big table. And there was just all these old men sitting around, like these nerdy old men. And it's like, okay, why are we here? Stuff like that. Ghislaine would be there sometimes, but there would be much older men.
Did you ever talk with her at length?
I mean, I met her, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she was from or went to school in Oxford, and I lived in Oxford growing up, when I was young. And so, had some conversation with her. I mean,
what did you think of her?
I mean, she was very charming and eloquent and, beautiful and stylish, and definitely was charming. And just that's all I thought about her. I didn't really think anything else. I didn't really know anything back then about her like we do now. Yeah. So, but she was very much interested in getting to know the other girls, and she was definitely an organizer of the only woman there with a bunch of men. So definitely like the organizer of the girls being introduced to the men. Or I saw a couple friends like sitting on their laps and things like that. And it was definitely a flirty environment. I mean, I found out years later, one of my friends was brought into a room with one of the other men and assaulted and things. So,
how did that make you feel when you found that out?
Well, it didn't make me feel good, since I had brought them there. It made me feel really bad about that. But I didn't know then really what happened. This was years later I found out about it. So it wasn't really told. Like we weren't really, like I said, right. Nobody really said anything about it back then.
When you would be invited to a party like this and then they'd say bring friends and then you do, and you've had bad things happen to you, but then you also said you had that other side of the relationship where he's like, oh, he's kind of a mentor and helping my career. Is that like kind of looking back on you as a very young woman when this was happening, is that kind of what made you be like, yeah, it'll be fine. If they're there with me, it'll be fine. Like, is there that thought in your head that like nothing will happen if it's all of us there?
No, well, not really. I just knew that anyone who knew him benefited from it. I would say that they got kind of what they wanted. So a lot of times they wanted to meet him. So like a lot of times I didn't want to introduce my friend, but it's like, oh, your friend helped you get that? Oh, can I meet him? It was like that kind of thing, And so these are my really close friends. It wasn't like I went and picked somebody off in the street and they're like, okay, come in. These are my really good friends. It's like, what? You got to go to NYU, or you got to, and it's like, oh, well, okay, if you want to meet him, like knowing, well, he does like these creepy massages. And just so you know, like it was kind of like that.
You did say that.
Sometimes, but I don't think I ever thought or knew that they would be assaulted. Sometimes And a lot of survivors say this. Like, a lot of times you think it's only you because they're not saying that it happened to them, So I didn't really know the extent of these assaults until, modern day. I didn't really know then what was really going on with them. I mean, sometimes you would ask them and they would say no. So you have to understand the way we think about Epstein today is nothing like we thought back then. A lot of people just didn't really talk about him so much.
That's right. You didn't even have the top of the iceberg scraped back then.
Yeah, until it became a conversation.
Right.
That wasn't until late 2003, early 2004 when it became a conversation.
I think it was even after that, right? Was
well,
it
not
like
me.
05?
Well, he was still involved with a lot of my friends and other people to 05, 06. But for me, I was out early 2004.
Okay.
And it was only because a girlfriend of mine came to me and said that she was abused through Giuffre. And she said she went to go see him on the Upper East Side apartment, I guess, mansion. I guess it had never been that bad, but there was a situation where he had told her with that demon look in his eyes, like, you need to go in that room right now and you need to have sex with him. And she was scared and she did it. She went into the room and somebody came in, had sex with her, just dismissed her and left. It was kind of this quick thing, which fucked her up, because that wasn't what she was wanting or expecting. And then from there, that's when everything opened up, because then she was the first one to say, this man made me do something. It's like, what? He made you? And then we started questioning, like, well, I wonder if, like, when he would call us to go, maybe that's what he wanted us to do, but this was like a forced thing with her. Like Virginia Giuffre explains in her book, go do that, And so when she said that, she was just like, you have no idea who Giuffre is. And like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? And so we called the friends over and we're all talking, like, what do you mean? What did he make you do? What's going on here? So it was more of like this, oh my gosh, are you serious? This type of conversation that we never had before. So this is 3 to 4 years in.
So now you hear it from other people.
Yeah, and things are unraveling.
Yeah.
So it's a completely different way of thinking about this man.
Did you guys, at any point in that conversation when this is coming out, did someone suggest to call the police or something like that? Or was it assumed that it's like, yo, this guy's powerful, we got to stay away?
Well, we talked about it, about contacting the FBI. There was definitely talk about it, but nobody wanted to do it. We just wanted to. What we talked about was just the best way to get away from him, so we didn't have to see him again. That was just what we spoke about. I'm not quite sure if she ever saw him again after that. I'm thinking no, because she moved away after I moved away. I think we all just tried to get away from New York, where he knew that he spent most of his time.
And he would, before this though, he would like call you were saying too. So that would be a lot of the contact where he's like, go meet with this person in Hollywood or go do this audition, then ask you about it afterwards. That was a lot of your communication with him, right?
Well, in person, yes, or maybe a phone call. That's when he was pretty serious because he's right to the point.
Yeah.
But sometimes it would be the secretaries calling for things and you would have the chance to say no, or I'm out of town, or tell them I'm out of town, and maybe they would just try to hound somebody else to do something, I never really thought that those horrible things were happening. I just kind of thought, okay, if he sent me for an audition and I was assaulted or somebody tried to have sex with me, that it was just that separate situation between the two of us. I had no idea that it was because of he was sending me for that reason. I just knew when I got back, I always thought it was strange. And even at Capitol Hill, when I talked to all the girls and we sat down, I would say, did he ask you whenever you got back from meeting with anyone exactly what happened? They were like, oh my gosh. He wanted to know exactly every single detail of everything that happened from the moment you sat down with him and talked to him, how he approached you, if he tried to assault you, if he tried to, what he said. Every single one of them said the same thing. And we're just like, wow, that's what I always thought, because I always thought it was weird. He would ask me so many questions about one little incident, about one stupid audition, But then there were girls sent to the same audition. So let's take a director, right? He's getting auditions from innovative artists and Abrams artists and all the different agencies they're sending, their talent to, specifically for this role. But then Epstein is sending 10 girls.
Yeah.
There's a difference that he's sending these 10 girls, for an audition. He's not a movie agent. You know what I mean? So that should have been the first red flag right there. But people are introduced to directors. It doesn't matter who you are. I think back then I was just excited to go on audition with a really big director, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
I had asked you earlier where people, maybe if they aren't abused, learn to groom like that. And you said someone has to teach them. And there is a lot of evidence that one of the people who taught Jeffrey Epstein about this stuff was Adnan Khashoggi. That's a separate issue. But what you're saying right here, and I'm not saying this to make light of it at all, I'm just drawing a parallel, is a sick sadistic version of like an NFL coach watching a lot of tape and learning every single thing about the other team. When he would call you and, in my opinion, just hearing you describe it, and ask you about every single thing that happened, he's studying to see what the other person does, or if they were, because you said he would say to you like, oh, you didn't do anything or something like that, and then he'd be like disappointed or something. So the disappointment might have been so sick that he's like, oh my God, they weren't good enough to get her to do something. Like,
yeah, could be on that.
Oh, that's a level of depravity that's a little beyond the bill. Wow. Did you follow the Diddy case at all?
Yeah.
Did any of that surprise you?
With Diddy?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the early 2000s, Diddy was around a lot and everybody knew about his parties you didn't want to go to. I mean, there were the white parties, I mean, I went to a white party. I mean, everybody wanted to go to the white parties, but like, the after parties I never went to, or most people I know didn't go to those. And they had a reputation of you didn't want to go to those parties. So that was very well known back then. I also knew like a club owner that used to say that, he's gone to those parties and about the bisexuality and things of Diddy and stuff. It was pretty well known back then.
Very open.
Yeah, it was pretty well in the music industry back then, that a lot of those men were doing those types of parties and stuff. So the difference with Sean Combs is that there was a lot of drugs around.
Yes.
And with Epstein, he liked you to be very present, and there was never any alcohol or drugs around.
So you never saw him drink or anything like that?
Or he would never give you drugs or alcohol. He wanted you to be present. And he hated drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Like he looked down on you if you did them. That's the difference with P. Diddy. I think there was lots of drugs and alcohol involved. I mean, I think there was even drugs in the baby oil, right? So I think it was very different environments, but still, sadist abuse,
Yeah. Now, when you met Virginia Roberts Giuffre years later, right? Well, actually, before I get to that, because you've mentioned it a few times today, I think we should talk about that. When he first, did you know that he got arrested in 07, 08, and that case happened? Were you aware of any of that?
Yes, of course.
Oh, at the time.
I just didn't follow it closely.
Okay.
And I didn't pay like a lot of attention to it. I definitely didn't pay a lot of attention to it.
So you didn't know the details of like there were 43, 12, and 13, and 14-year-olds coming forward.
Did anybody know that then?
I don't think so.
No, I just knew that they were underage girls. And then I would speak to some of my friends about it. Gosh, did you know that Jeffrey was with underage girls? And then I had to remember there was this one time that my girlfriends and I, we flew on the airplane down to like West Palm Beach, and we were supposed to be going to Miami. We ended up in West Palm Beach. And I remember one of the girls, Rena, she's been pretty outspoken.
I remember her.
Yeah, Rena called Jeffrey and was like, we're stranded in West Palm. We need a ride. And he organized a car to pick us up, to take us to Miami. And when we got into the car to take us to Miami, there was a really young girl in the car. And I remember we were just like, why is she here? Like, that's so weird. And I remember we'd always spoken about it. Why was that young girl in the car? And then now we know why. There was a young girl in the car. But that was the only thing that I ever saw that I would never have thought that he was into anyone underage. He was very, very adamant if any of the girls that were around were over 18. And that's what I always saw. And that's what I always thought anyway. They could have been underage, but I never knew. The girls on the island I found out were underage, but I never knew then that they were.
The ones you were there with.
Mm-hmm. I never knew they were. I mean, I'm sure maybe they were told to lie and say they were overage, or we probably didn't even talk about it.
That's the thing. That's the thing about like the blackmail and stuff. Like, all you got to do if you want to blackmail someone like that is, let me think of a really blatant example, because I don't know how this would work, but you have rooms cameraed up. Some guy goes in to have what, even on camera might appear to be consensual sex, but let's actually assume it's not. But it might appear that way. In a court of law, you might be able to make the argument. But if someone comes in afterwards and pulls out the driver's license or the passport or whatever identification of that person and just holds it up to the camera, you're fucked.
Yeah.
It's done. And so there are people, because it's so hard to skim through all this and be like, could this person be innocent? Could everyone just looks guilty, and you just want to go off with all your heads. But there are people who have said, like people who are viewed as perpetrators of this stuff, who have said exactly what you just said, which is, I always saw them with young women, but I never saw them with a 12 or 13-year-old or 14-year-old or something like that. They were always of age. And so I was like, all right, whatever. And it's like when I hear people say that, I'm like, I could see how the fog sets in. But to me, it's like looking at it from their perspectives. All right, you go into an island with the guy and it's you and him and like a few housekeepers and like fucking 10 women.
Yeah.
That's not a little weird?
Yeah, exactly. Even just the 16 to 22-year-olds that are on the island. It's a little weird to have a whole bunch of young girls on the island, And do these men even know that their passports are taken away and they can't leave until he says they can leave?
That's crazy.
Stuff like that.
Who took your passport again?
Well, Epstein would take the passports of the girls when you go to the island.
Personally?
Yeah, so you can't get away. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So people don't know all this stuff is going on. And then you don't really know which men knew of young girls or the really young girls. You just don't know until you read the files and you do an investigation, I mean, you have Bill Gates saying, I had sex with a Russian girl. Was it a 16-year-old Russian girl or was it a 22-year-old? I mean, she's not coming forward. But like, what do you know? You got an STD from her. That you're trying to hide from your wife. I mean, I love Melinda Gates.
Oh, she's going.
Oh, I love
him,
her.
Man.
She's just going off, and that's what we need: women who say, enough is enough. She's an Epstein survivor.
Yeah.
She survived him.
Yeah.
Because her husband was locked in there and saying all these years, "Oh, I just don't know that guy that well."
The best line ever. He's like, "Well, he's dead, so."
Yeah, he's dead. Yeah. You think all your skeletons in your closet go away just because he's dead?
That's not an answer, my man. Oh my God. Oh, it's so bad. When did you not meet Virginia Roberts Giuffre until 2019?
Yeah, well, I never actually met her in person. I've only spoken to her on the phone a few times. Yeah.
Okay.
I reached out to her because she spoke out in 2019 about Prince Andrew.
Right.
And I reached out to her because I knew of two things about Prince Andrew, and I wanted just to corroborate her story or support her. The first one was seeing him on the island, and the second one was my girlfriend. She was made to have sex. And she told me it was a prince.
Was that the one who went into the room and came back and blew the whole whistle?
Yes, that was the one.
And that was in the mansion.
Well, she had told me it was a prince, and I said I met a prince on the island.
Yeah, I wonder.
And so we put two and two together.
Yep.
And then Virginia spoke out and said she was abused by a prince. And I, during those years I started speaking out, I didn't really have a support system, so I reached out to the survivors, Virginia and the other Marika and the other girls that were there, and started talking, with them about our stories and how it lined up. It was the same years, so.
What because you said you were at least aware a case was happening in '08 when it was happening, '07, '08. In 2019, when he got arrested, obviously the story went crazy mainstream, and that is a big difference here. They kind of like shoved the other one under the rug when it was happening. What made you go, whoa, and have it all, like have your moment, and when was that moment where it all came back and you're like, holy shit, I was trafficked, assaulted, all this stuff, and I've never talked about this. Like, what was that moment?
Well, the trafficking, the assault, all that stuff took years to come out. So there wasn't that moment, but there was a moment when he died when everything came like off my shoulders. With him dying was when I was finally able to say, okay, wait a second. I had just a reaction to it that just was, it was really profound. So I wanted to know answers, and I just wanted to know like what was going on. There was so many things back then. And I just wanted to reach out to people and try to, understand the story. And that took several years, because when I spoke out in 2020, 21, it was really to support other survivors and their stories. It wasn't even like, I hadn't even really gotten to my story yet. That came a little bit later with being deposed for things and talking about it. The Epstein Fund, I started talking a little bit more about it. The more I started...
Wait, the Epstein Fund?
Yeah, there was this, Virgin Island Epstein Fund. I didn't get a payout or settlement of it, but a lot of the 200-something survivors did. But I did go and tell my story. That was almost like, like almost being re-abused again, because those women were not empathetic at all. And so I kind of shunned away from telling my story. So it took me some time to get there.
When did you start therapy?
2 years ago. So it took some time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So not at all right
Well, actually,
away.
no. I did start therapy right after that, but it didn't really work for me. It was just talk therapy, and it didn't really do anything for me, just talking about stuff.
What was different about the therapy you
The
started
therapy
2
that I
years
got
ago?
2 years ago was EMDR therapy.
What's
and
that?
so EMDR is when they use like a flashlight, and they go back and forth like this, and your eyes go back and forth like this. And you go into that kind of like memories that are stored, and you bring those up, and you talk about them, and then you kind of restore them. And so it's like this kind of like hypnotherapy. It's very popular with trauma victims, and it works. It works. And it's very traumatic to bring these new, actually old thoughts and memories back, but then you kind of compartmentalize them and take them delicately, sensitively, to talk about them, and then kind of put them back. And then there's pulsating things in your hands so the memories are going back and forth in your head, the flashing lights, the music. And so it's going back into that part of your memory that's suppressed. And trust me, mine was deeply suppressed in there.
Oh, yeah.
So it took a little bit of time, but you would definitely have outbursts and moments of like breaking down and crying fits and things like that, trying to get through it because you don't really want to go there as you're starting to remember things. And unfortunately, it goes into your childhood and the abuse maybe that you had in your childhood that you don't really want to talk about, because I tend to be like, I had the best childhood. I traveled all around the world and I had everything I wanted.
That's what you said earlier.
I've always said that, but EMDR taught me, no, girl, you did not have the best childhood. You did not have a support system. You didn't feel safe. You didn't have the emotional capacity to, be loved in the way that you needed. Like my parents bought me everything I needed, and they will say today, well, and when you lived in New York those 8 years, I came there, gave you 15 grand for your divorce. I was there for you. But I'm like, I lived there for 8 years. You never came. You never helped me out for 8 years. You came one time in 8 years. That's not the love and attention and what I needed then, the type of people who say, all these things that you did wrong, but never gave you that support to make it better, to leave your child in survival mode, and which is I was in for so long, and so EMDR taught me, you didn't have a safe place. You didn't have that love that you needed. And granted, now I have it with my children, so I had to bore people to get the love and support that I needed. And trust me, it's the best love and support I'll ever have, unconditional love. So I do have it now, but EMDR therapy, it'll take you by the balls and like, it makes you really look deep and hard into things. But because I had that was the reason why I'm able to be this person in front of you that's powerful and brave today. If I didn't have EMDR therapy, I would never been able to be this person in front of you. I needed some type of hard therapy. And to be able to hold space for people in my podcast of their, traumatic stories. I go to EMDR on Wednesdays for 2 hours for myself.
You're actively doing it.
For myself. And on Thursdays, I go for the survivors, I go for their stories because it's traumatic dealing with them.
You guys do it in a group setting?
No, I go for myself just to work on what Lisa needs to work on, personal stuff. And then after I work with survivors and do this, this work is not easy to talk, you're doing it with me, talking to survivors and hearing their stories, especially of domestic violence and stalking and all the things, child abuse that we go into on my podcast. I have to go to EMDR therapy to deal with the trauma from others. Of taking on their trauma because I'm the one sitting there crying where they're the bold and brave ones talking. So, it's a lot of work. I'm surprised you're not in therapy for it.
I think, I get to talk with so many different types of people. I do all different types of content. And thank God, because if I had to do, this is amazing today, but if I had to do one like this every day, I probably would be in therapy because you do really, first of all, there's like a great delicacy to one like this because I don't want you talking about things you don't want to talk about. There's also cameras rolling and everything too. And I want you to feel comfortable and all that. But I'm also trying to understand something that's not possible for me to fully understand, but do it enough that I can get it to a place to where you can at least share an experience that other people out there can be like, oh my God, wow, I never thought of it that way. Or something like that. And when you do that, these aren't happy stories. You know what I mean?
No. But they're so important to tell.
Yes.
Like you just said it, like so people can understand and think, oh, I never thought of it that way. That's the whole point of doing it, is for you to get a better understanding of how things work, how these master manipulators operate, how people groom, how they can sexually assault you over and over. Why do you keep going back? All these questions, and so people can really understand, the complexity of abuse, especially when it comes to a serial predator like an Epstein, even just like a Cosby, understanding how these actresses went to go meet with this guy and how they were drugged and raped and don't even know what happened to them.
Right.
How everyone has their like MO and how they can get away with it for so long. I speak out for those reasons. And also the other half of it is because I want to be there for survivors. And I'm always representing hundreds, if not thousands of survivors every time I step up on Capitol Hill, every time I'm on the podcast. Every time people send me hundreds of messages all the time.
Right.
I was just in Ireland, all the messages that come in from people in Ireland who are like, I have something I want to tell you, and just like getting it off their chest.
Yeah.
Like this is something that is a huge, massive movement that's happening right now where people are actually being aware for the first time, speaking it out loud of their abuse that they had. Because we all, 1 in 3, 1 in 4, have had some type of abuse. Whether it's just like your narcissistic girlfriend,
all different forms.
There's all different forms.
Absolutely.
Of it, and to really the worst forms of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were doing, what's it, EMDR it's called? When you were doing EMDR for the first time in 23 or 24, 2 years ago when you were doing it, and it made you look back on your childhood and everything. This is also, if I'm not mistaken from what you explained earlier, this is also since you kind of ceased having a relationship with your parents, right? And your parents, at least the way I understood it, please correct me if I'm wrong, it kind of stemmed from them not being comfortable with you talking about this or sharing your experiences, and they kind of abandoned you from that. Did that make it, I don't know if the word's easier, but give you a clearer path to maybe look at your childhood differently through the lens of this therapy because you were now past the point where you're like, God, at a moment I needed them the most, my parents literally said, you're gone.
Yeah, the moments I needed them the most, they weren't there for me. That was the years when I lived in New York City when I had 3 young children. They weren't there for me. And not to say they don't have their reasons, but I mean, I'm their child. There's never any reason in my book. There's no reason that I'm going to turn my back on my child. There's never anything they could do. So I don't understand that. I did ask my mother. I did ask her, and I think it was 2023 in January. There were some text messages that went from my mother to an ex-boyfriend who had seen me on a documentary and had reached out to me, and had formed a relationship with me, and he pretended like he was a friend. And my parents had met him, and, he was a really good Christian guy. And after getting to know him, he was very clear that he wanted to abuse me. He wanted to have a threesome with me. He wanted to choke and spit on me. He wanted to do all these sexual things with me, and I didn't want to have a relationship with him. And I don't know, my mother, for some reason, took his side because he was like this good Christian man, and on paper, he was like this good guy, and she didn't understand why I didn't want to have a relationship with this guy, even though I was trying to tell him he was abusive. So we had this big falling out over this particular man.
Did you tell her what he wanted to do to you?
Yeah, I did tell her, but for some reason, a lot of parents, I don't know, I've come to realize a lot of mothers want their daughters to be in a relationship, no matter if it's abusive or not. They want to have that relationship where, this wealthy man is taking care of you and your family. Oh, he said he was going to take care of your kids and put them through college. Yeah, Mom, but he told me he wanted to choke me and spit on me too. So there was just all this crazy stuff going on with this person who had definitely groomed and manipulated my mother. So long story short, I'm just trying to explain why I don't speak to them anymore.
Yeah, no, it's clocking for me.
So things weren't good with my parents after this relationship with this particular man. Then 6 months went by, and so January comes about, and I'm looking at my phone, and text messages are coming in from my mom, but they're not to me. They're to the other guy that had broken up with 6 months earlier. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. Why is she texting him? But I read the text messages, and she's telling him how I should have never left him, and he was the best thing that ever happened to me, and shame on Lisa. And so I finally had the guts, because normally I'm just like, oh, my mom, she just must be a bad moment or something. I was always sticking up for her. But in this moment, I hadn't spoken to her in a while. And so I said, oh, Mom, why are you talking to this person like that? And I can clearly see that you're saying, oh, I don't even talk to Lisa anymore. And I'm like, well, I didn't know you weren't talking to me anymore. And, that's news to me. And I said, well, what's the problem? And she goes, well, I'm ashamed of you. And so she wrote it. I can read the text message. I'm ashamed of you. And I was like, oh, that's funny. You're ashamed of me, but you're not ashamed of this guy who's like sleeping with 70-year-old, ratchet call girls, which I had like 8 pictures I sent to her of him with these ratchet call girls. Like this came out about him, but she was ashamed of me, who's this mother of kids who was just trying to be in a real relationship. So it's just all this stuff came out where my mom clearly said, like, I'm ashamed of you. And that was the last text message I ever got from her. It was the last message, and that was January of 2023. And so for me personally, that was the hardest relationship I had ever had to let go of. It took me a year to deal with the fact that she didn't want to be in my life. She wanted to be in my life to everyone else around, to pretend like she was in my life. But that's how she really felt about me.
On her terms.
Yeah. And it was hard for me. So I needed that EMDR therapy really bad to be able, to me, that was the biggest heartbreak of my life, because not only did I had to let go of her because of her and her flying monkeys and all the other people. I had to let go of my aunts and my cousins and my sisters and brothers, because, that she, infiltrated to them, how she thought about me, and I didn't have a chance to save myself. And so now had to deal with this through this therapy took me a long time. It probably took me a good year and a half to finally get to the point where my therapist is trying to drill in my head, your mother's never been there for you. She's never supported you. She's never probably really loved you the way that you needed. You need to move on from this. And so I finally got to the point, probably was more recently, where I'm just at the point where I'm like, you know what? If you're not good for me, if you're taking other people's sides than your own daughter, like I have to step away. So I got to the point where I was creating these boundaries. Finally, for the first time in my life, I'm there now. I'm literally locked in now. Like nobody's coming in unless you are really fully supportive of me. And that means anyone who's even trying to be in a relationship with me, any man, nothing. So, of course, because of that reason, I've been single for a few years, leading up to a year ago. And, just had to create these boundaries. But that gave me, actually for the first time, that power to take my power back and be like, you know what? I'm only going to have people that love and support me around me, which meant there wasn't that many of them. And then I had to go find the people that love and support me, like you and other podcasters and other survivors and other people that we've formed now this real family, of support system that's beautiful and I never really had before.
I'm sorry that happened. Yeah, that's whenever I hear that, and I know like Dave can speak the same way, like it just makes me feel really lucky. Like
you were so lucky.
I have great parents.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You do.
Like
you're very lucky.
It just doesn't. I had another guy in here talked about his mom on the fourth husband and third husband, I can't remember, was like the main one from his childhood, some abusive stepfather. And there was a day where she told him, I love you, but I love him more. Mm-hmm. Which means she didn't love her kid. That just like doesn't even process to me. And hearing what your mom says, like literally taking the side of abusers, I might add. I think I kind of was like getting at this earlier, but now that you've gone back in therapy and like looked at this, do you feel like your mom maybe never loved you, or she just doesn't know how to show or feel love?
Well, I think that I was always aware of it. I was always aware of it, but I never wanted to admit it. I never really wanted to be fully abandoned by her. So I didn't, that was actually the third time I'd seen messages like that accidentally went to me or that I'd seen. It was the third time. And so the first couple times I this can't be true. It was just a mistake or, just can't really feel that way. But by the third time I was like, Lisa, wake up. This person's not on your side. And I had to realize that, but when they make it look like to everyone else that you're the problem and not them, and that I feel this way and she's the one who doesn't want to be in my life. No, it's not really that way. I'm the one who I feel like I was always desperately wanted my family to be in my life and be supportive like I feel like I am of them. But we don't always choose our family. You have a wonderful family and you're so blessed for that. Yeah. To me, that's the most beautiful thing in the world, but it's the reason why I dedicated my life to my children to be the best thing for them. And my kids know that mommy is like 100% for them and they feel safe. They feel really safe. And that's, I think, what all kids really, really need is to feel safe.
Well, that's 100% true. And also like, that's the best case scenario. Like what you don't want to do is continue the cycle.
Yeah.
The brave thing is to be able to, and the right thing is to be able to break the cycle and be the opposite of all the things that you were missing. Yeah. And it sounds like obviously you're doing that. So that, I mean, that's the silver lining on the other side. Doesn't change that these things happen. I'm sorry about that.
Well, people love in different ways. I mean, my parents were very functional. They gave me everything they wanted. We traveled around the world. I mean, I had, trust me, everything I ever wanted, and they were great parents. So I always had that like narrative all the time. Mm-hmm. Like I had the best upbringing, the best childhood. I lived on a boat and I did all these things, But then it's like my therapist is like, look, lady, wake up. Yeah. You didn't have emotional support. Give me a time when you had emotional support. I never had to realize I never had it. I spent months away. I never knew how to miss people. Like I didn't have that emotion of missing someone. Like I would go away for 3 or 4 months at a time away from my family, and I never missed them. I would have friends or roomies, you know, who would be like, oh, I just miss my mom so much. I miss my dad. My dad's everything. They would get little notes from him, or I miss my boyfriend. And I never really had someone to miss. Like I never had that feeling of missing. You know, I only had it like in the last year. I finally met someone a year ago, you know, who we have this wonderful friendship, you know, this foundation of, you know, just safety. Like finally, for the first time in my life, and I'm in my 40s now, a safe relationship that isn't based on knowing that guy just wants to sleep with me or just wants my body, you know, which is, you know, a lot of women have this type of relationship with men.
That is the ultimate compliment from a guy's perspective. The number one compliment that you can ever get from a woman is when they say, I feel safe with you.
Yeah, right.
And it's true.
Is it true? Yeah.
And I'm sure that sometimes there's people who take advantage of that, which is awful, but it sounds like you finally found something where you genuinely feel that way and have seen that exhibited over a long period of time, and that's great. I'm happy for you with that.
Thank you.
Have you talked to your dad at all? Is your dad in the same boat as your mom, or?
Well, my dad was just the type that never reached out. He never called or texted. My mom always did it. Yeah. So she was always the one that I spoke to. So when she wrote that text message to me in January 2023 and I stopped reaching out, I stopped trying. No, I didn't really hear from my dad that much after that. I mean, he came out recently for something with my family. And, you know, he saw a plaque on the wall that said, like, you know, like top entrepreneur or what was it, like top, like one of the 10 top people to look out for in 2024. One of the top influential people to look out for in 2024. It was like a headline like that with my picture, and he pointed at it and said, you know, I'm really proud of you, you know. So that meant a lot to me. That's all I ever wanted. You know, words of affirmation are my love language. And so all I ever wanted was to feel like my parents were proud of me. You know, I never really felt that through my life. So that felt good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you still don't have a relationship with your siblings? You said your mom would like kind of pit you guys against each other as kids?
Yeah, up until, present day.
What's the age gap between each of you? Older brother, younger sister?
No, my brother's a year younger. My sister's just 3 years younger.
Okay. So, wow, you guys are pretty close in age, too. You're not tight. That makes sense.
Well, come to find out, a lot of siblings aren't tight.
It sounds like, though, there's a lot of siblings, because I was an only child, so I can't speak to this from experience. But I know I see what you're saying there, but I'll see a lot of relationships where siblings aren't tight, but it's more like
mutual respect, or
no, what's the word? Like there's underlying tension, but there's very clear shared lived experiences that they can go to, and it sounds like you didn't really have that part.
Yeah, I never understood that, because I had girlfriends that did not have a close relationship with their sisters, but they were sisters. They would still get together with the family, and they're still sisters, even though they weren't close. And I know guys that hate each other, you know, their brother, they like hate each other, but like whenever they're together on holidays and stuff, they're still brothers. You know what I mean? It's just like I never really had that close family dynamic, and we were a very small family. So I just didn't have that. That's why I took marriage seriously, why I wanted to have a big family. I always wanted to have kids and have that, my own family, to have, you know, a really close, you know, knit relationship. But I do have that now.
And you've done that. Yeah, it's awesome. Are you religious at all? Or have you ever been religious?
Well, I mean, I wasn't raised under any religion. My mom was Roman Catholic, but we weren't raised. My father just let us believe, you know, figure it out on our own. I mean, I feel like I'm very, very spiritual. You know, I do a lot of you know, meditation, and I have like this retreats and things I go on. I feel very spiritual, but I'm not like a religious person. No, no.
But do you believe in like a higher power?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yes, a definite higher power. I believe in God. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm not a religious person either, but I certainly believe in God and certainly believe in a higher power. And I try to live my life assuming I'm humble and not knowing what comes next, and I'm going to have to answer for things I do here, so do as much good as possible, right? And I think everyone has to kind of have their own relationship with that. So however people get to that is great with me.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, reading through these files and seeing the things that they're talking about and the things they did, and hearing about personal experiences that you've shared today and other victims have shared, and again, all the stuff we don't even know about yet, it is impossible to not look at this and say there is Satanism going on, whatever that is. I'm not the guy that can define that. There's way better people in the comment sections that could actually like really define that. But do you have a similar experience when you read about this and see these things like shit, this is like ritualistic in a way?
Well, Satanism is real. It really is I mean, the Epstein world is a cult. It's a cult. If you look up anything about cults, has the exact same, the leaders, and the followers and the major grooming that's going on. And if you look at the rituals and stuff that they do, the pretty disgusting rituals that they do, it is a form of devil worshiping. And yeah, I mean, I think with one extreme, you have to have the other, and the beautiful light and the God and the peace and, the beautiful universe and things that we know are real as well, I don't really get into all the other religious stuff, and people can believe whatever they want to. But I do believe there's a very dark evil with also the beautiful light. And I feel like we're all trying to get to that beautiful light right now and try to take some of that evil away. Now that we're aware of what's going on, we're hoping somehow to move away from it or shift something that we can't. Those people aren't able to do those horrendous things anymore. There's got to be something. We can't just now know what's going on and not do something about it. Yeah. What that is and how we're going to get there, I have no clue. That's what we all have to figure out right now. But we have to keep trying, because now that we've seen how dark that goes, how could you sit around and just let that happen?
I agree 100%, Lisa. It's, and I hope something does. But you've described that look in Jeffrey Epstein's eyes a few times today. I believe the word you used was like demonic, like the demon look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that shift, yeah.
Do you think there's something more to that? Meaning, like, if demons are real, then he was possessed by one or was one?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about how far that goes with like the lizards and the vampires and all this crazy stuff. Anything is possible. Like I don't like to say nope, that can't be possible. I don't know. I do know there's some demonic stuff going on there within him, with Ghislaine, with many of them. I mean, it was clear as day if you read it on the files. So I'm not like making anything up. It's clear as day. So I don't know. For me, it's very scary, and there's a reason why a lot of people have a lot of fear around it.
Yes. And Les Wexner's even talked about it openly in the past. Now, I guess you could say it's a figure of speech, meaning possibly, but I don't think it is. I think it was an honest Freudian slip, if you will. But he talked about Steve, can we pull this up? It was in the 80s or 90s. There was a big article spread on him, maybe in GQ. I could be misremembering it, but I'm sure Deef will find it. It was in GQ. No. Okay. But he talked about he's possessed by, I believe it's called a Dybbuk, which is a Yiddish word for demon.
Oh boy. And
literally says it, and it's like it drives him, and it makes him do the things he does. Now, in a court of law, you could say, oh, he's just saying he's trying to drive towards wealth or whatever. But
he said that?
Right. When I see the evil.
Bachelor billionaire.
Right. When I see an evil of a guy like this. Yeah, Deef got it right here. And he's actually saying something like this. It's like Dibbyk or something like that.
Yeah, they protect him for whatever reason. in the files and everything. They protect him. That was one of the things at the Pam Bondi hearing when I think it was Massey who brought it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had to demand they release that name, and it was his.
Yes. That there were 6 names that Ro Khanna said after he and Massey went and visited the DOJ to review it, and then walked out and said them. And I still have to do, I recognized a bunch of the names. I still have to do more homework on the other ones. The one that I gave a shit about immediately was that he was one. And it's like...
Yeah, 5 mentions of it.
Yeah, 5 mentions. There it is. Yeah. All right, so can you just zoom in a little bit, Deef? Thank you, brother. So in the morning, Leslie Wexner became a billionaire. He woke up worried, but this was not unusual. He always wakes up worried because of his Dybbuk, which pokes and prods and gives him the itchiness of soul that he calls fficked. Sometimes he runs away from it on the roads of Columbus, or drives away from it in his Porsche, or flies away from it. Can we get the next
instance?
Yeah, the next instance.
Well, that's
of it.
already creepy.
He met his Dybbuk again when he climbed Vail Mountain and changed his life. All right, let's go to the next one. I want to see where they defined it. All right, here it is. Perhaps it's time to reintroduce Leslie Wexner's Dybbuk, the demon that always wakes up in the morning with Wexner and tweaks and pulls at him. When he was a boy, his father called it tummel, a churning, so he feels, quote, molten and unformed, pricked by the spiritual pins and needles. He met this demon again when he was 40 and already worth $500 million when he climbed the mountain.
Wow.
I mean,
what the heck?
yeah,
Why
I
is that
feel like
even
if
written that?
I feel like a lawyer
Why'd they
could
even-
work with that.
Why
in
did they
court.
Why did they even print that?
They quote as Dybbuk saying.
Okay,
More.
so he says that the Dybbuk saying more. What next? He went too fast and got into trouble in 1979. He turned operations over to some other fucking dude and did the buying himself. He was always competitive. So the Dybbuk drives him
Yeah.
for more. More. Money, money, money.
Wow.
That's the other thing with these people, Lisa. It's clear they, like, when people talk about Satanism and this stuff, it manifests not just quite literally through, like, maybe doing some weird ritual and bowing before a ball or, the devil, but it manifests in worshiping things and worshiping materialism and worshiping things that you put above the value of humans.
Yeah.
Now, I do have to say this, to be fair, just like journalistically. Nancy Mace, who I appreciate, has been really pushing some things recently to try to get this out. She did say when they released the files, obviously they're awful, but she said that she was told to be careful with information you see related to, government reports and stuff like that, like from 2020 and on. And the reason she said this is valid. Basically, once this case went mainstream, you know how it goes.
Yeah. And people
Just like Harvey Weinstein probably abused fucking
Yeah.
2,000 women.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
like
that's-
40,000 women
know.
accused him of it because they could get
Yeah,
in
no,
on
of
it.
course. I
Your
get that.
schizophrenic neighbor could say that happened.
Yeah.
So I will say I have read like some, because the FBI, obviously they fucked up their job a ton here.
Yeah.
Their job is to just review any lead that comes in. So you will see dead serious straight emails of just FBI person 1 to FBI person 2 saying like, all right, witness claims that blank, blank, blank. And there's no like opinion on it. They're just reporting
Yeah,
to their
no,
colleague
sure.
what they said.
But there's quite a few emails. I mean, hundreds of them that are
Right.
way before 2020.
That's correct. That's correct. I'm just saying for this
Yeah.
one right here,
Oh,
where
this
it's
is what came
stated,
after,
this
yeah.
is a December 2021. So I have to say that.
Yeah,
But you are
I'm aware of
absolutely
that.
right.
I mean, I'm the person. Well, a lot of the survivors are that came forward. Other victims that come forward and they speak to us about their assaults and things like that. And many girls or women. I don't know if there's this thing of, Epstein survivors being like the rock stars these days, people looking up to them, but quite a few have come forward saying they're Epstein survivors. And then you get into their stories and then you realize they've never even met them,
Right.
so I'm aware of that.
Remember the
Going on
9/11 lady who like ran the victims fund and claimed she was there, and she literally lived in Spain at the time and was caught years later?
Yeah, it's
Like,
ridiculous.
It's unfortunate because it
No.
hurts the real victims.
No, exactly. I agree.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's, as you said, there's many emails prior to 2020 between these people where
Mm-hmm.
they're talking in code about stuff, and you can't even like rule out the stuff that it's just like, it's nuts to me.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Now, when he died, obviously you said this all kind of came forward. What was your first thought when he died? You're like, did you think there's no way this guy unalived himself, or do you think it's possible that he did?
I mean, the day that I found out was pretty traumatic. I just focused on the fact that he was dead. It wasn't until a few months later I started speaking to other survivors and started like thinking about the story and started doing some documentaries and things like that. So it unfolded over time. I'm trying to think of your question. I think when I really thought about it, there was no doubt in my mind that he was probably murdered and not taken his own life. I never thought he took his own life. I just don't think, just knowing the type of person that he was, that was something that he would do. I feel like he had so much on so many people that he wouldn't have a reason to, and he would have gotten off on it in some way, somehow.
Right.
Technicality or something. They would have made something up for him to get because I think that he was necessary and needed for whatever reason he was there. So I don't think they would have, I don't know, so many people say nowadays that he's alive. So many people say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even think it's true because I hope it's not true. The only reason why I spoke out was because he had died. I think a lot of survivors are in fear if he really is alive. Not that he can really do anything now, but you never know. I think there's just a lot of fear that comes with this man, and just, being in the public eye and speaking out about it, just because there's just so many layers of it. So I don't know, but I definitely don't think that he committed suicide.
Yeah, I agree. And I've always thought he is in fact dead. And as of right now, I still think that.
Yeah.
But once again, it's like after all the crazy shit we're seeing, I have to say
Like,
it's
who
on
knows?
the table that maybe he's not. I had a guy, Candace Gibson, in here who became friends with a couple chefs that worked on the cooking team afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
And they think he's alive.
Why?
They said there's no, similar to the logic you said, there's like, they said, there's no way he would have offed himself because he was too narcissistic.
Yeah, we know that.
And he always thought he could get out of it.
But why do you think he's alive?
Because they believed, Candace was like unclear on some of it, but essentially like they believed he had too much power and too much influence over too many very important people to not have some sort of out switch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I would have thought, that he always thought that he was going to get away with it, so, and be protected. That's the reason why he was able to do all that he was doing. But then again, if he was dead, they already have everything. I mean, someone has those videos from all of his homes that saw everyone who went in and went out, and who went into what door and out of what door. So almost like, what did they need him for when they have everything that he could possibly tell them, I would think, is there.
Right.
So, I don't know. That's a hard one.
What if you look at all these people who are like a part of the cover up now and trying to not release this? There's still, as of the time you and I are talking, there's still 2.5 million documents that they say they're never going to release. Forget redacted. They're just never going to release them.
If they're never going to release 3 more million documents, what the heck is on them?
That's what I'm saying.
How can it be any darker or more disturbing than what we've already seen? Because that's what it means when they say, we're not going to release it. There's a reason. There's like nothing on it. We're not going to release them because there's nothing on it. Obviously, it's the worst stuff on it.
It's so hard to think about because, like, look at the JFK thing, right? Just with this example, you'll see where I'm going with this. If you could point to, and I think you can, like, the government killed the guy. There were high-level people at the Pentagon and CIA who did it. I don't know, let's say there's 100,000 people working at those two places at the time. Realistically, 99,900 and some of them had no idea that was going to happen that day. But they work at the Pentagon or CIA or these places that have a name on the door where very high-level people made the decision under the jurisdiction of those organizations to do it. If the American people ever got full proof of that and found out, those places are shuttered the next day. And the reality is, for all the horrible shit that we know organizations like that do, I mean, it's been well documented on this podcast, the horrible shit CIA does, there are objectively also people there who are actually doing their job and, you know, stopping a terrorist attack.
Yes, of course. Exactly.
Right?
That's the same thing, I think.
So what I'm saying is, the weird thing is with something, now bringing back to the Epstein case, if it were powerful enough people that like the whole house of cards came down, if all the information came out at once, and then like the fucking country ceased to exist. If I'm sitting on the other side and I know that that's what's going to happen if the information comes out, I can't even imagine having that decision because you are covering up the most vile crimes known to man.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. When it comes to cases like this, I just try to look at the facts. Yeah. So let's say he did commit suicide. Why? Then everything would have just been fine. The way everything, the guard would have been awake. That there wouldn't be missing tape. That everything would just be in place, right? But then why are there so many things out of place that didn't function right, or why are there so many discrepancies around just a suicide? If he really did take his life.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
I mean, that's all you have to really look at. If it was just so cut and dry, everything would be in place like it was a normal day. But why on that day?
Perfectly.
Everything just didn't go right. Why?
You see the document in the files where they had the date the day before?
Yeah. Why is there so many weird... I mean, they make so many stupid mistakes. You know...
The other thing that's so strange about this case is it reveals how small the elite circles really are. Everyone knows everyone. You can trace a guy in 1974 to someone in power now who was that guy's friend's golf buddy.
Oh, yeah. Well, because when you make a certain amount of money, when you're in that bracket, you only hang around those people.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's a much smaller amount of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you, when you would be in the rooms like where you go in there and it's all these old weird dudes, was there a feeling of like, there's them and they look at us as like, oh yeah, they're here, but they're not. They're not with us. They're just here at our pleasure.
Yeah. I mean, of course, they don't really want to get to know you.
Right.
Yeah. It's almost just kind of weird that you're even there.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think of the whole Ghislaine thing going on? Because now she just pled the fifth or whatever, which I guess is her constitutional right to do, but she's been sent to a minimum security prison.
If that was even her.
If that was even
it
her,
didn't even look anything like her.
The nose was different,
I mean, his whole face. It was so weird. Like, that really freaked me out. That
right?
was the first time I saw, like, where is Ghislaine? Where does she go? That is not her. They put, like, a fake Ghislaine in there to answer the questions, you know? This whole thing gets, like, weirder and weirder.
It gets weirder and weirder.
Where did they take her? I mean, I really do hope that's her, but if they took her out of there, I was just like, this is just the weirdest. We live like in the Twilight Zone. Right? It's like you can't make this shit up.
All the things that, like I said, used to be like, come on. Now it's like that's on the table. And I'm trying, like in my seat.
Yeah, but these things were told years and years ago.
Yeah.
You know, people just died once they talked about it.
Yep.
You know? Now it was like, you can't kill everybody now. Now it's all out there, you know?
Yeah. It's hard, like, to do it journalistically, too, because you're like, you want to stick to all the facts. And then you see a lot of code words and stuff, and you're like, we don't have full facts, but man, if that were a mob case, you look guilty.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how about the fact that all these people feel so comfortable in their position in society that they openly send all this stuff on email open source email to each other.
Well, they never thought anyone was going to look at those emails. They never thought anyone was ever going to see those emails. They never thought they were ever going to release it, those files.
All right, let me go one step farther with you, though. I don't know if this changes your opinion, but we're talking about billionaires and stuff. What happens with billionaires a lot?
Mm-hmm.
They get sued.
Yeah.
What happens in civil courts when you get sued? You have discovery,
Yeah,
which
I
means your
guess.
emails are discoverable.
I don't think they ever thought Epstein's were going to be. There's no friggin' way they're writing that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Thinking it's ever going to be out there. I mean, Bill
Right.
Gates never thought any of that stuff. Bill Gates never thought any of that stuff was ever going to be out there.
Right.
There's no way. I'm sure they fought like tooth and nail to make sure those didn't come out. But,
Yeah, some of it's out now.
well, it's just the only thing that's happening to these men is they're being embarrassed in society. That's
Right.
all. People get to laugh about it for a little while and they get to go on with their lives.
I hope not. I hope some of them really do see justice with this.
Well,
But-
that's up to our Justice Department, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Whether they want to do something about it or not.
It is.
I mean, they have total capability of doing so. They have everything in front of them to make the right decision and to, go after them civilly or criminally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see what happens. Let's see what unfolds.
Well, I really appreciate you not only going through everything, but also being brave enough to speak out about this for so many years now and represent not just, as you said, the voices for this case who can't speak out or might even be dead and really can't speak out, but also
Yeah.
the voices for people around the world in other cases who feel pressured to not be able to say anything. It's a really important example you're setting every day, and I
Thank you.
I hope you can see the you can't change what happened to you, but the positive force you're now using on the other side of it to make some change. I think it's really, really amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for saying that. I do see the difference now and being there and doing this. And I never thought, if you told me a year ago that I was going to be at Capitol Hill and at the State of the Union, like all these things, I would never have believed you. But it's so important. And I can't stop now. And I look forward to season 2 of my podcast where I can have more survivors on and have them tell their stories and have them have their moments as well.
Yeah, we gotta
That's
get Sarah on there.
That's
for
what
you.
we all need. We need those moments, that make us feel like we have some justice.
Absolutely. All right, well, Lisa, thank you so much, and I wish you and all the victims all the best, and hopefully you actually see some justice for all the things that happen here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate that.
Everybody else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace.
What's up, guys? Thanks so much for watching the video. If you have not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button before you leave, as well as leaving a like on the video. It's a huge, huge help. You can join my Patreon via the link in the description, and you can also join my clipping community via the Discord link down below. See you for the next episode.